Hello, I would like to start with thanks. Thanks to all the team here for making such a nice, free online event like this possible. Thanks to all people who share knowledge about typography and publicize events like this. That's the reason I'm here. And I'm glad of presenting my work here, and I would like to share my warm feeling about it. So, thank you. Well, let me introduce myself. I'm Miguel-Ángel Moya-Estrella, and I'm a graphic design teacher at the EASD València, Spain. I'm currently pursuing a doctoral degree at the Polytechnic University of València into the didactics of typography. Before that, I've been a visual art teacher at secondary school until recently, and always have an interest in typography. So all these mix up made me develop an interest in introducing typography in not only in the graphic design or journalism studies, so sooner in secondary school or even before, why not? So what I am going to talk about today is an approach for teaching typography in secondary school, which is a collection of small projects developed in school in order to introduce secondary school students into typography, and then show you their results and raise some questions. So what's the point of this? There is a big exposure to computer phones, right? Typography uses is present in our everyday life, but secondary school students jump into text processor like Microsoft Word or whatever. They jump into it as users without knowledge of typography, orthotypography, or whatever. Also, there is a lack of calligraphy practice. They don't write by hand in the everyday life. Some secondary school students only do handwriting when doing an exam. Only then, right? There is also a lack of digital typography knowledge, right? They jump into text processor straight as user, as I told you before, but without being aware of it. And also, there is a lack of orthotypography knowledge, right? They use text processor automatic corrector as the only way of working with orthotypography, and that's it. If the automatic corrector detects a mistake or a need, it may work, but if not, the text is going to be wrong. So they don't have a clue about orthotypography, or they have a very, very basic knowledge. In this sample, if that Jose Luis Cortés published in his Twitter account, he asked people to guess which is the best way of writing an A letter. And if you see the answers of people, you will see how crazy this fact is, right? So these problems motivate me the present project based on these two main objectives, right? So I wanted to improve handwriting of secondary school students, and also I want them to gain basic knowledge about the computer use of typography, right? This was fit into the curriculum as a reinforcement in one side for students that need to improve their knowledge, and also as an enrichment for the so-called well students or good students that wanted to improve their knowledge beyond the initial curriculum, or they want to face visual arts from a different, more motivating perspective. Right, so how we did it, how we start. So first of all, the students get to know the very basics of typography. Of course, they start with the anatomy of letters, then they know how deep, how complex this topic may be, and they know how to identify fonts and then to classify them. right? They get into classification. We work with ATPI classification or the one they consider, right? And they jump into classificating typefaces. As we are in secondary school context, we try as possible to use open source or free resources. Here, for example, for classification, we use the free font-based version, right? Which does work quite well for this issue. We also work with creative typography, and it is true that in the secondary school curriculum there are some open projects, right? And we use these open projects to introduce typography. For example, in visual art, you have to work with collages, printing, and so we have to work with collages. We make a collage about typography, and so we introduce typography in every aspect we can. Also, they know the basics of calligraphy, right? And then, of course, they will practice them. So after getting to know all this, we jump into these 4 projects I'm going to show you, right? So first of all, we introduce secondary school students into the world of typography, and after that, we develop this project. The first project is called Adopt a Typeface, and this project consists in that every student adopts a typeface and investigates about the author, its origin, and its form. And at least during a quarter, the student's coursework is created by using that typeface. This way, the students get to know in deep a specific typeface and its semantic and graphic possibilities, right? At first step, they investigate about the most important facts and figures in typography, right? Helvetica, Futura, and so. But as I told you before, we are in a secondary school context, no money for paying that license, right? So we work with open source or free resources. For example, we work a lot with the new free font in here 3 variants, the sans serif and mono versions. It is an open source project of a generic font. It does work quite well, like an Helvetica, right? Some cases. So they work the history and so about Helvetica, much here and there and so. But then when they have to work with it, they work with an open source resource. Other resources we use, the Open Foundry. There are some places that compilates the free open source fonts that we can find, and especially Open Foundry presents them with specimens that are quite attractive to secondary school students, so they made a good promotion work here that works quite well with secondary students. And also well-known open source projects like LibreBaskerville or LibreCaslon. Some paid with share formula, for example, Atypo Foundry, which is a Spanish foundry that make very nice work. They offer some of their fonts with the pay with share formula, right? So you can download it and use it simply by sharing that you have downloaded that font. And it was funny to see a Twitter timeline of a secondary student talking about Fortnite and Minecraft and so on. Then, hey, I've downloaded this font for Native Foundry. I recommend you. Also, of course, we work with Google fonts, very nice fonts we can use, find here. And also we get to know in depth the system fonts, right? As they learned how to lay out, proportion, and scales, and so, well, you can make some nice stuff with system fonts like Arial or Times New Roman and so. So the results were quite good. They getting to know basics of typography, and they've used it, right? And a funny fact I'd like to share with you is that some students were rejected, right? Because some teachers, language teachers, English teachers, said that it was too good to be true, and they didn't believe that secondary students can achieve this level of layouting, right? Some words were rejected. Of course, I mediate into the teachers and students, but that made me think how we are accustomed, we are used to bad design in the secondary school environment, right? Some teachers says that if they continue studying typography like this, they weren't able to distinguish, to separate professional work from student work, because they suppose that students have to make bad design. No. Also, some students say, hey, when I grow up, I would like to buy a phone for me, right? They get in love with typography that much in this project. So another project, designing dust jacket. It's easier to guess. In here, students get to know book parts and then develop the idea of an invented book, and then lay out and print the dust jacket. In here, as I told you before, with the other project, we try to use open source resources. So we work with Scribus, which is the InDesign alternative in open source world. It's not the Adobe InDesign, but it does work quite well in a school environment, and also work with Inkscape for vector design and some layouting. So there is life outside the Adobe software world, not at the same level, of course, but perfect for a secondary school environment. They print these book jackets and lay out, they assembled it into a real printed book in order to have a real mock-up. So here you have some photographs, some pictures about this, in which they printed it, they make a plotter print, and they assemble it into over a real book, and then they have the real mockup. This project also worked quite well. Here you have some samples, right? Here you see they get to know the cover, the spine, the flaps, and layout. Okay, the third project, also easier to guess, is about calligraphy. By improving students' calligraphy as the main objective, they learn about the basis of calligraphy and then practicing classical calligraphy models by using different tools. It is a fact that calligraphy and lettering are in the showcase at the moment, and thanks to that, it was not hard to find basic materials at the corner store. In Spain, it was quite famous an editorial that makes some calligraphy practice for kids, and also in secondary school they work quite well. So they start learning basics of calligraphy. We use the two-pen technique in order to make some Gothics. Also highlighters, right? They work for oblique writing. And at the end, after practice, they finally get some good. What I told you about the materials, right? It was at the moment are easier to find. You may like it or not. Some stationary materials like the Tombow markers or pillow parallel, but they work quite well in order to introduce young students to that. Some students say, for example, with some of these pens, oh, I always see them at Instagram. Now I have to reason to tell my parents to buy them for me. Thank you. because there are lots of Instagram or social networking about this. They were wishing to do it. To do it. For reference, we take the books of Claude Mediavilla and Ivan Castro. They work quite well in order to introduce them in a more serious way or in a maybe a funnier, more cool way. And well, it worked quite well. Then some funny facts about the calligraphy project is that, for example, some words were rejected too. For example, a student made an exam with a very nice handlettering, and it was rejected. Some teachers say that this student work is not done even by the parents, it's work by the grandparents, because calligraphy, some teachers said, is a grandparent's fact. It's funny. Well, and the last project is a mix of small projects, is transversality. So as I told you before, we try to fit calligraphy into every step we can. Calligraphy project, adopted typeface project, they have a very warm receivement. So teachers of other subjects participate in this project. So, for example, in the workbook day, they make some lettering in. Sorry for the pictures, not the best, but in the workbook day, they make some lettering at t-shirts and they wear them over the day. In the International Women's Day, we get to know some female typographers or designers. For example, in Spain, we have Noel Blasco, Lucía Meseguer, or Vincent Studios. Right? Also in in technology class, they work with materials all over the type. So it is nice to see how all the students has their own capital letter at the bedroom, working with wood, with several different materials, right? And that's it. The results are hard to value, but our first evaluation was by a survey in which almost most of the students, more than 90%, accept that they felt an improvement in page layouting. They get an improvement in readability. They write a lot better and get in love with calligraphy. They experience a taste for handwriting and calligraphy. They were bearing of typography as an important tool, and they also use social networks like TikTok or Instagram not only to talk with their mates, but also to get some inspiration about typography, which is of course a well fact. So that's it. That's are the 4 projects I wanted to share with you. And as a result of them, I would like to share some open questions about this that I am working with them at the moment. So, should the schools offer more in-depth calligraphy learning, or is it enough the way it's done at the moment? Should secondary school introduce some notions of typography in the Spanish curriculum? I don't really know if in any other countries typography is learned or taught in secondary school, but not too much in Spain, so should be introduced. Also, is the IT area the place to learn about graphic design and layouting? Here at the Spanish curriculum in secondary school, the only bits of layouting, sangria, justified, and so is taught in computer science subject. So as typography is work within a software, within a text processor software, they jump straight into the use of software, and the computer science teacher is the one who teaches kids how to lay out a page, is the one who teaches the basics of graphic design, because they jump into Inkscape, into word processors, and I have this question: is it the correct way of doing it? Should computer science teachers do this job? And last one, when is the best time to start learning typography? Right? I would like to see as sooner as possible, right? But I will leave this question open for you. So that's it. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll be glad for answering your question here. Thank you so much.